All right, welcome everybody to our weekly webinar here at BEEC. We'll wait for people to begin funneling in. We have a big crowd today. I'm sure a lot of you are in our WeChat group. Some of you are from other channels, but we're very excited to have you all here today. We'll give it just 1 minute as people funnel in. That number of participants keeps going up, so thank you everybody for taking the time out of your Friday night or Saturday evening, depending upon where you are. So my name is Jonathan Ginsberg, President of BEEC Education. Today we have a very important topic. Unfortunately, Jesse Mosqueda, who was going to be giving the topic, he's feeling a little sick. But as we say, the show must go on, and we think that everybody still needs to learn very important lessons, principles, guidance on how to be a better writer. So today the topic is writing, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's a lot of all of it. So more or less, how do you make sure you're on the good side and certainly trying to avoid the bad and the ugly side? So we'll hop right into it. So first off, who is BEEC? It's always a great question. A lot of you know us, some of you do not. We focus on the long-term education of students, meaning what is their purpose and what are they trying to achieve for their future success. So the idea is, if you're going to be studying so hard, you're going to be working so hard in college, what is that thing you're really working toward? And if we can help students to better understand themselves, their goals, their career paths, what type of environment and area they're interested in and makes them happy, then that is something that can guide the entire planning for high school, for college, to make it more purposeful and to make it more meaningful. So we believe that the pursuit of the long-term success is what really should be guiding short-term goals, like getting into college. And in that way, students can actually achieve a better short-term goal result. So that's why we have to offer different types of training to students, whether that's academic, whether that's extracurricular planning, whether that's offering internship opportunities so students get to practice what they think suits them. All of this is very essential in addition to writing practice, let's say writing classes that we offer, and SAT, ACT. So it is unfortunate Jesse cannot be here. He's really a great mentor for our students as well as a great writing teacher. But I will do my best to fill the shoes, and hopefully everybody can gain some good lessons today. So first off, before we hop into good writing, how to be a great writer, what writing is not, what you should be avoiding or not be so concerned about. Basically, a lot of students will say it's scary, and maybe it is at first. You have the blank page, the blinking cursor, you know, maybe you're beginning to write and your mom is yelling at you because you're tapping your feet because you're so nervous. Well, now we're building a story. We already have a visual of what does that scary look? What does scary mean? Already using words that in this case are verbally expressed, but can be easily written expressed. We're already crafting a story. So the point is, do not be scared of writing. It cannot hurt you. Another aspect that people believe is that writing can be very formal, as in, you know, I speak with my friends, but when I put it into writing, then it's like I'm drafting a letter to the King of England, you know, that you're suddenly being transported to Dickensian London. And the idea is that writing really should not be more formal than speaking. It's just a different means of communication. The fact that it goes into the written word does not mean it's necessarily more formal. Another thing people believe is that writing perhaps should be complex. And then unfortunately, this goes right into we'd say the evil cousin of formality would be this complexity, convoluted logic, unnecessarily smart language. You know, we have students that write, I have a great affinity for the sciences. Does that mean you like science? I love science. I enjoy science. You know, suddenly we have this, you know, terms of phrases that really don't make sense that do not make sense. And then when, you know, people believe that simply, but because they're in writing, that it suddenly is a good idea, but they would never ever speak that way. So the idea is, if you wouldn't speak that way, why would you write that way? It's probably a problem. So in addition to complex, a lot of students view writing purely as an assignment, as in they never do it when it's not assigned to them. But in reality, even when writing is assigned to you, writing is the method for completing the assignment. In fact, the assignment is something much larger, whether it's just, whether it's to convey an argument, whether it's to be sharing a story or a reflection. Sure, the written word is the vehicle for this assignment, but writing is never the assignment. Lastly, it is not a punishment. It is not meant to hurt you. It is not punitive. We do not go into court of law and say, hey, you need to write a 10-page paper. That's not how it's meant to happen, although sometimes it does feel that way. Teacher may say, now you need to write 500 words about this topic, why you should never do this again. And it does have this punitive aspect to it, but really you need to divorce those two ideas from each other. What is writing then? Well, we believe writing is reflective. So what does that mean? Reflective means if you write well, you're digging deep within the material and thus yourself. What that means is that you are getting at the core, the truth of what you're trying to express. And that requires quite a bit of reflection. Writing is still procedural. Even the most creative writing, it's not pure inspiration jotting words onto a page. You must still structure it. You must still be purposeful with your words, and you have goals about what this writing is trying to achieve. There's a procedure to it. In addition, that means it's also hard work. I'm not going to say it's easy. That would be a lie. Writing is not easy. It takes work, from outlining to the writing to the revising to the editing. In fact, there's a great little phrase that is from the French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal. Everyone knows the Pascal triangle. Anyway, he said, I would have written a shorter letter, but I did not have the time. I'll say it again. I would have written a shorter letter, but I did not have the time. It sounds funny, but it's actually true. The idea being that if you write well, then you're actually scraping away to the core meaning. You're getting rid of the fat. So in fact, you're shortening your writing oftentimes more than lengthening it. And that takes time to write well, to be able to do that. What else is writing? Writing is truly thinking out loud. You write how you speak, and perhaps that means you need to practice how you speak. Maybe that can be an issue for some students writing. But realistically, the idea is that it should be reflective of your voice. You'll notice that good writing has a strong voice. It has a strong voice because it embraces the idea, that thought that's really you're thinking out loud, rather than burying the voice in complexity, burying the voice in other issues. Oh, we already have a question. How do you shorten your writing? Any general rules? We're going to get into that. Basically, every single line, even in the most creative contexts, every single line has a purpose. It's like, dots connecting in a storyboard. And if you're starting to realize in your writing certain sentences do not have a clear link from the previous sentence to the next sentence, or are repeating a link, or adding no value, that is when you begin to shorten, you begin to cut. We work with a lot of students, especially in college essays, and they can be maximum 500 words or 250 or 350, depending upon the school, and cutting is something we always have to do. And that's actually a really fun exercise for us, because it forces students and it forces us to think, what are we really trying to say here? How do we get 600 words down to 350 words? How do we get 1,000 words down to 650? Suddenly, we really get to challenge ourselves on what is the core meaning and our intention of the writing. What else is writing? It is a two-way conversation. I'll explain this more. I think this is extremely essential for students to embrace as a concept. The idea being that you are engaging in a conversation with the reader. Okay, how? You are writing, they are reading, you put down words, they react to them. And if you do the writing well, you control the reaction. You're like the great, maestro. You get to control how the symphony responds. You are, going through this kind of tango, this kind of dance with the audience. And if you do it well, then they move. When you want them to move their right foot, they move their right foot. When you want them to move their left foot, they move their left foot. When you want them to be excited, they're excited. When you want them to be depressed, they're depressed. You're really going back and forth with them in this battle, this two-way conversation. And it's also an opportunity. We say opportunity because it's all about connection. You have this chance to communicate something to somebody, whether that's a story, whether that's an argument, whether that's a more simple request. This is an opportunity to state something. Oh, But I really, oh, sorry, more questions. So I'm just gonna be addressing questions as they come up, because if you have questions, then we want to answer it, because this is really all about you. So another question: I really don't know how my readers may respond. Any suggestion about how to predict that? Good writers workshop their writing. Workshopping your writing means sharing it with others. It is not about you being a genius in your own one-person world. It is about having the bravery and the foresight and intellect to share with others and let them tell you how they respond. You don't need to necessarily be the hive mind and know how everyone will respond to everything. We always say it's similar to, what do the best, marketers do for marketing? Well, they don't believe they know either what other people will think. They have focus groups. They share it first. And if you can do that, if you have a parent, if you have a friend, that can really go a long way. But that's also back to the hard work. It doesn't just happen naturally. Now, maybe as you get better with it, sure, you'll naturally be more attuned to what people may be thinking. But inevitably, you must share your work. Okay, happy to help. Okay, thank you. Good, great questions though. So please, whenever anybody has a question, please ask it. And lastly, writing is learnable. Nobody is born a great writer. So if you're not born that way, you must be learned. So you could argue that maybe some people have a more natural talent. I guess whatever that means. But I can tell you at the high school level, everybody's capable of being a good high school writer. Maybe not everybody will write a great novel, but I promise you, anybody can be a good high school writer, or into college, certainly. All right. So what is good writing? I think we've touched on this topic a little bit thus far, but not completely. So good writing, let's go a little bit deeper. It is empathetic, back to the two-way conversation. You recognize who the reader is. You feel for their emotional response, their understanding of your words, and you are able to begin to anticipate that reader's questions in response to the words that you've already put down on the page. Oh, another good question. I just talked about shortening your writing. How to write longer. My essays usually are shorter than the required word limit. That's a very good point. We run into that quite a bit. Students say, well, how do I expand on this point? Well, I would really like to know what kind of writing it is, but oftentimes it could be evidence being used to support your point. And even more, it would probably be the depth of the point you're trying to make. How well thought out, or how deep have you really gone into the topic at hand of what you're trying to convey? What I mean is, a good thesis, let's say it's a research paper. A good thesis is arguable. And coming up with an arguable thesis is very difficult to do well. But the moment you do, suddenly there's a lot to say. And if it's not arguable, if it's relatively straightforward, well, suddenly there's very little to say. If it's more creative writing, then it can go a few different directions, whether that is bringing in, more about the setting or the characters, or, but really it would go back to the point of developing further what the mission or goal of the story is. Because even creative writing has a goal. Okay, very, very good question. So I'm loving the questions. What else is good writing? Good writing is logical and clear. In the end, how do your points match up? How are your paragraphs structured? Do the sentences flow into each other? And is it, does the reader, we would say, get it? Can they read through it quickly, not expending too much energy, and they say, oh yeah, I get what he's saying, or I get what she's saying, and this makes sense to me, regardless of the extent to which I agree, disagree, at least it makes sense to me. And good writing means you're also a teacher. This idea being that you, as the writer, are trying to convey a message. So are you conveying that clearly? Just like if you're trying to teach a concept. Some teachers can do so very well. They understand how the student will consider the information provided to them, what they may know beforehand, what they may know during because of the lecture, or what they may know after. And good writing can do the same. They can convey a message in a way that makes sense to the reader. Good writing is also simple, but not simplistic. Simplistic meaning, just really short sentences dry, plain, maybe not really achieving what you want to say, but it's definitely readable, but it's just not good. So you want to be simple but not simplistic. And we do have a video I will show you that perhaps speaks more to how to avoid the opposite of simplistic, and that would be fancy. People trying to say more perhaps than they truly can with fancier verbiage or fancier sentence structure that really makes no sense but kind of feels good at the time or feels smart. And before I jump into that video, I'm going to answer a question. Sure, what do you mean by sentences coming together? Any examples? How do I know if they're coming together? So this will be best shown. We're going to run through a bunch of examples from creative to analytical to even professional examples of what good writing can look like and how those dots get tied together in a nice way. But it's a very good question, and we will certainly be getting there. So I will open up the link now, if everybody has a couple of minutes. This is from the show Friends. If everybody knows the show Friends, it's a fun show, one of the big sitcoms of the 90s. And basically in this clip, one of the characters needs to write a letter of recommendation for their friend. And in doing so, he tries to be fancy. And in doing so, he fails. Anyway, without me spoiling it even more, I'm going to click the link and begin. All right, let's get it.
Production agency needs letters of recommendation, and we were wondering if you would write one for us. Of course, I'd be honored.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think there's been an oversight. Joe, we would have asked you. We just thought you wouldn't be interested.
Yeah, it's just that we don't think of you as really being so much with the words.
Wait, oh, hey.
Clearly, we were wrong.
Look, I got a lot of nice stuff to say about you guys, okay? And I know how much you want to have a baby, and I would love to help you get one.
You know what? Enjoy, we want you to do it.
Thank you. All right, let me see how I'm going to start. Dear baby adoption decider people.
So excited about your letter.
What you working on?
Oh, Monica and Chandler's recommendation. I want it to sound smart, but I don't know any big words or anything, so...
Well, why don't you use your thesaurus?
What'd I just say?
Watch. Here, you highlight the word you want to change, go under Tools, and the thesaurus gives a whole list of choices. You can pick the word that sounds smartest.
Oh, my God, that's great. I'm smart. No, I'm brainy, bright, clever. I love this thing. Look out, ladies. Joey Tribbiani's got the whole package.
I don't understand.
Some of the words a little too sophisticated for you.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, of course it does. It's smart. I used a thesaurus.
On every word?
Yep.
All right, what was this sentence originally?
Oh, they are warm, nice people with big hearts.
And that became, they're humid, prepossessing Homo sapiens with full-sized aortic pumps.
Yeah, and hey, I really mean it, dude.
All right, Joey, I don't think we can use this.
Why not?
Well, because you signed it Baby Kangaroo Tribbiani.
Anyway, hopefully that clip worked. You could all see it. Hopefully it was kind of a humorous way to take a look at what the what overly fancy writing can look like and how it would miss the point entirely of just communicating a simple message. So that's something we would like to certainly avoid. And lastly, what is good writing? It is well edited. No matter what, writing is going to take revising. You're going to need to make sure that you are stepping away from the writing before revising it and making final edits. Otherwise, you'll likely miss. Usually you have your thoughts already wrapped up in your head. So it's good to step away from a piece of writing, certainly showing it to a friend. But no matter what, the details do matter within writing. So, strong editing is also very important. Okay, let's keep moving forward here. So let's analyze it. Creative writing. Let's consider what is a good piece of creative writing. So I'm going to present a essay from a student who did a great job. He's at Berkeley now. This was actually not his Berkeley essay, but he used one similar. But this is a longer essay for Common App, so better for an analysis purpose. But the prompt for the Common App that he was addressing was some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, please share your story. So this student wanted to speak about a topic that was related to his background. So it really could be anything, right? This is very open-ended and really could go in many, many directions. So let's begin to look at the writing, and we're going to analyze it really line by line. So hopefully this is all clear enough for everybody, but I'm going to be reading it aloud as well. For me, the true Sonoman is someone who not only embodies the joie de vivre of the wine country lifestyle, but carries within something of the independent, radical spirit of the town and its history. Someone who is willing to stand out a little, to do things differently. Someone like my father. So this is the opening paragraph. It is a tension grabbing. It is highly specific. It is personal and clear. And I would say maybe it's a run-on sentence. But I don't care. It has a lot of energy. I can tell this person knows how to write. Perhaps it was intentional that they wanted to mesh these concepts or these ideas into one sentence. This is creative writing. You know, we can loosen up the grammar rules here. The idea is he, already sets us up in a world of Sonoma, the wine country, and he balances it with this open spirit and kind of relaxed nature of living in the wine country, combining with more independent radical spirit, the idea that it's highly individualistic, and then somehow spinning it back to his father. So, okay, this is going to somehow be related to his experience living in Sonoma, and especially as the son of his father. So what I will say is into the next paragraph, then let's continue. So where is this going? At least I'm willing to read it now, but where is it going? When I first tell people I'm from Sonoma, a typical response is Sonoma is so beautiful. While this is true, Sonoma is much more than meets the weekend wine taster's eye. Despite the town's rise to national fame after The Bachelor, Sonoma has its own storied past. And even with the rolling hills and oak woodlands, the pastoral beauty of vineyards, and sweeping views that extend to the San Francisco skyline on a clear day, I think the people of Sonoma are what truly define my hometown. So we have the original paragraph, which is setting up the idea that there's this place Sonoma he's from, that somehow he's inspired by it and his dad. And then we hop into, he goes into what he knows we think about Sonoma. Because Sonoma is so famous just for wine country, that's really all people know. It's just so beautiful, right? So he acknowledges that. He's setting up this relationship that he's aware that you as the reader probably don't care about Sonoma, or at least you already have a preconceived notion of what it is. Then he goes further. So despite the fact that it does have these rolling hills, this oak woodlands, has pastoral beauty. So he's acknowledging that you're correct. Your belief is correct. But in my opinion, based upon my experience, it's really actually the people that define my hometown. And reasonably, we would not know about the people so much if we're not from Sonoma. So then he goes into why. Take, for example, the dancing, jogging lady, a woman in her 60s who wears a sports bra and short shorts while dancing, jogging fanatically around town. She even has a Facebook fan club. Okay, we have an exotic image of this, this woman, this exuberant, vivacious woman, who's a little bit older, but is, very good shape and running around, and she even has a Facebook fan club. Okay, so we're seeing that the people here could be interesting. Let's keep it going. In 1846, Sonoma became the birthplace of California statehood, following the famous Bear Flag Revolt, during which time the very man the Revolutionary Party locked up, General Vallejo, became one of California's preeminent state senators. So there's this rich history. Sonoma has, exuberant dancing, jogging ladies. It also has a rich history. And, In addition, Jack London made his home in the Valley of the Moon, as did Mary Ellen Mammy Pleasant, a hero of the Underground Railroad, who was later accused of being a voodoo princess. So we have this more creative example with Jack London, the great author. We have more progressive for civil rights leader, Mary Ellen Mammy Pleasant. So we're getting this array, we're getting this survey of all the great characters and values, perhaps, that represent Sonoma. And then lastly, bring it back to the top. More importantly, my father, whose dedication to honest and resourceful living has shaped my life. Well, okay, we have some interesting words here. His dedication to honest and resourceful living. So what does that mean? And if I'm going to talk about it in my essay, I guess that matters to me. I could talk about anything. So not only is it my father that matters, it is his commitment, dedication to honest and resourceful living. What does it mean as a voodoo princess? That's a good question. I'll address this. Voodoo is, generally we talk about voodoo dolls. Voodoo would be a sort of black magic that is, like a superstitions that people believe in, you could say. And then the voodoo doll would be a doll that looks like the person that you're thinking about or wishing spells upon, and they would anyway have some kind of dark magic to it. So the point is she was accused of being a voodoo princess. It would be like being accused of a witch, like the Salem witch trials. Obviously she was not a voodoo princess. She did not have this black magic, but it was a way of accusing people that maybe the government didn't like or didn't want to be associated with. So they say, oh, you're a witch, you're a voodoo princess. It's kind of exotic. Sure. Okay, we got more questions coming up. Which part of this essay would best demonstrate the sentences coming together concept? Sure. So let's consider this. Let's say back to paragraph 2. Let's break this down more so. When I first tell people I'm from Sonoma, typical response to Sonoma is so beautiful. So opening up relatively broadly, this is true. Most people, if they know about Sonoma, wine country, it's probably beautiful, right? And then what's next? Well, I actually think it's more than that. So I had to first say what you think it is to say it's more than that. And then while this is true, Sonoma is much more than meets the weekend wine taster's eye. And if it is, okay, in what ways? Despite the town's rise to national fame after The Bachelor, Sonoma has its own storied past, okay? So there's a past that's really helping to differentiate it. And most people probably don't know about this past. Without this essay, I would know very little about Sonoma's past. Next sentence. And even with the rolling hills and oak woodlands, the pastoral beauty of vineyards, and sweeping views that extend to the San Francisco skyline on a clear day, I think the people of Sonoma are what truly define my hometown. So he's, leading up. All these sentences are simply leading up to the concept that it's really the people that define the place. And without these sentences, though, if he just says, the people of Sonoma are amazing, let me tell you, maybe I don't want to know. But now, because it's been balanced with my understanding of Sonoma, he acknowledges what I think Sonoma is, well, now I'm being given a new reality. And maybe now I'm curious to be educated. Now I'm curious to learn what is going on. Or this, I wanted to write a summary about the past. How many sentences would the summary be? I'm going to argue that question, I'd be curious for what purpose are you saying it? A summary should be as long as you need it to be, if that makes sense. There would be this essay is going to be roughly about 500 words. How many sentences would the summary be? It's very tough to say. You could probably do it in about 50 words, I would say. But I do think the number would be slightly arbitrary in this case. And different people could handle it differently. It's just like how many words do you need to write a review about a movie? It really depends what you're trying to get after with the summary or with the review. It could really range quite a bit. Technically, you could write it wouldn't be a summary anymore, but the idea is you can dig deeper into this and you could write an essay even longer than this essay just to describe this essay for sure. But you just summary, I could say about 50 words, let's say, if you want a number. Sure. So let's continue on reading what's going on here. So we finished up through the first page. And let's move on to page 2. So just 2 miles from the plaza is house and home to my father's garden. In my backyard, the sunflowers, tomatoes, zucchinis, cucumbers, and peppers grow alongside 3 massive compost piles that my father lovingly tends, taking the spoiled food, plant matter, toilet paper rolls, and anything that will decompose and feeding it all to the worms and microbes. So there's a lot going on in this sentence. Once again, from a grammatical level, you might say, you could maybe break this up. That's very possible. But what is it achieving? Because we're not looking for perfect English here. You're going to fail if you're trying to get perfect English, but I believe this was strong English. This is good English. Created a very strong mental picture. So he's already setting you up in what's going on, where is this going? I've never been to the plaza, but I know what a plaza is. So I recognize that he lives near the center of town, right? I don't need to know anything else. He lives 2 miles from town. So, and then it's house and home to the father's garden. Well, this is a very interesting thing to say first. Normally say, well, my home's there, and then in the backyard is a garden. But he's really emphasizing the fact that the garden is going to be the focus here. And then you realize, okay, it's in his backyard. But that's secondary. Clearly the point is we're going to focus on the garden. And then he runs through this amalgamation of flora and fauna and vegetables, sunflowers, tomatoes, zucchinis, cucumbers, peppers. We get this idea of this, quite large scale, home farm that's probably a little overgrown, that has compost piles. And the key is into the words of what's going on. So he builds up this scene, highly colorful, highly vivid. His father lovingly tends, taking the spoiled food, plant matter, toilet papers, everything that can decompose, and feeding it to the worms and microbes. Why couldn't you just say, and then puts in the compost pile? One, you would miss the idea of the visual. It's kind of a gross visual, the worms and microbes, so you really see it. I know worms and microbes are eating something, but also you could argue that you're actually getting this really compassionate image, that he is feeding it to the worms and microbes. Yes, the thing is called compost. It is decomposing, but in reality, it's feeding the earth. And if he admires his father for having this garden, it's clearly for more than the fact that it grows vegetables. It's this idea of stewardship of the earth. And it's being expressed through the words and phrases. He doesn't need to say, my father cares a lot about the environment. Yeah, he really cares. He loves the environment. But now I know his father really does love the environment. And I recognize that this student has perspective, and that he too must really respect this thing and care about the environment, even though he hasn't said it yet. He didn't say once, I care about the environment. Not yet. Hasn't even come up yet. But if he can have this passion to describe his father's passion, then we understand, okay, this is essential to his value system as well. And then, boom, okay, it starts to begin. This passion of my father's spilled over to me and my sisters. Could have just said me. But the point is, it's uncontrollable. It's going to everybody in the family. I'm often shocked when, while visiting friends or relatives or on vacation, I see people throwing away perfectly good recyclable products and food scraps which could be utilized in someone's garden. So rather than belabor the point of how much you care from a positive direction, how much does it hurt you when other people don't care about the environment? And how foreign is it to you for them to act in that way? Wow, now I know what his house is like because he's so offended or surprised by how other people do it. I know his entire life story about how they handle food and waste in their home just from this one line. I often feel compelled to say something about the importance of being resourceful and conscientious, even persuading a few people to start small composts of their own. So we get this idea that, once again, it really matters to him. He must say it sometimes. He's not trying to be impolite. He's not trying to be offensive to people, but sometimes he really just must say, hey, I think you should do this thing. It's important. And he's proud of just the little difference he's made. He's not trying to say he's changed the world. He's not trying to say that, well, thank God I got these people who were doing terrible things. Now they're composting. No, they've even done a few small composts. He seems to show some pride in that. So let's keep it going. While he may not be able to change the way everyone thinks about waste, my father has put his foot down on his own 1 acre kingdom. I mean, this is just this is well done. the idea of a 1 acre kingdom is, you know, we're setting up, we're using phrases in ways that they're doing the opposite of what you'd expect with them. Putting your foot down is generally a negative. It means you're rejecting people. It means you're being authoritative. But in this case, it's so lovable. He's putting his foot down for waste. And on his, you know, 1 acre kingdom in this kind of, you know, area off the center of town in Sonoma. And then he keeps it going forward. It's not always easy to adhere to my father's rigid composting standards. Once in a while, my mother will stage her own revolt by pouring something down the garbage disposal. And we just, you know, do we not like him to tell us these stories? You know, he's not saying everything's perfect. Sometimes people go crazy. His mom is just like going crazy. Just throw this stuff out. I don't care. But at the same time, we value that they're trying to make this difference. They're really committed to it. And he's walking us through just typical human responses and trying to battle with principles versus just practicality and you know, staying sane in normal life. So, but my father doesn't find it nearly as funny as my sisters and I do. So he acknowledges it is funny. It's okay to laugh. Even though his father is pretty principled about it, he knows it's kind of funny. He's not trying to say, oh, and then my father, you know, became hugely mad and we blamed my mom for a month. No, that would throw us out of the story. Now we're getting the sense of, you know, the dynamics, the family dynamics, and we're really relating. I mean, do we not all have a family where they're, you know, mother and father maybe don't see perfectly eye to eye, or the kids kind of side with one, but they also understand the other? This is highly relatable. And keep it going. Late in the season, however, we see the results in a bountiful harvest. So this was to keep it under 500 words. We can't just write it exactly how we want, but the idea being this ties it together in that it's all worth it. A bountiful harvest means a lot more than just vegetables. Bountiful harvest relates to the stewardship of the earth, that all this effort is going toward a positive place. And you say that this is, you know, this essay, rather than talking about his environmental science club, he had an environmental science club. He did a lot of work in it. He didn't talk about it. That's in his activities list. But from this, do you understand his passion for the environment? Of course, much more so than, you know, than talking about some kind of a fundraiser he did. And not to say talking about that stuff is bad, but this was really the story of his life, that you wouldn't get it from reading his application activities. You wouldn't get it from other aspects of perhaps his letters of recommendation. This was really the root source, the motivation and inspiration for his passion for environmental science. So we say, in this case, it achieved the goal. That this would be a well-done creative essay that is achievable for any high school student. Okay, so this is creative essay, and I don't mean to belabor the sentences and get too dramatic about it, but it helps perhaps to just hammer down the point of what's really going on. So let's move it forward, though, with something more typical of regular school writing, more analytical writing. So let's analyze, let's get analytical. So this prompt was used for the Stanford Humanities Institute. The student got into the Stanford Humanities Institute, and the question was quite an interesting one. Some people argue we can only really understand literature that we read in the original language by people who are contemporaries, that some meaning or pleasure is always lost when we read works from other times and places in translation. Others say the human experience is universal, and thus we can meaningfully encounter texts written in a time, place, and language far from our own. Where does the balance lie between these two claims? Choose a literary work that you know in translation from a language you know, or one that you do not, and use it to defend your view. So, you know, it's a basic position piece talking about translation and whether you can truly understand the original work if it's been translated, or whether, you know, language and culture and these concepts are universal, therefore it's not a problem. And so let's look into how this student handled it. So we're just going to look at the intro paragraph and the conclusion. Intro paragraph. So many say translation is an art in and of itself. So we have this kind of, you know, broad line, you know, tying us, bringing us into the essay here. Of course, this statement lifts the burden of fidelity off the shoulders of translators, allowing for a personal interpretation of what any given text means. So although he's providing a universal truth at the beginning, or something platitude, you could even say. He's then debunking it, or he's spotting the flaw in the platitude. The idea is that maybe this is not a good enough phrase. In fact, this would then leave all of the burden, off the shoulders of the translators, that they don't have to care about meaning anymore because it's truly an art. If it's just an art, then maybe there's nothing, then it's whatever I want it to be, which is maybe not true. So what is lost is important and irreplaceable: the voice and the style of the author. So even if you're grasping meaning to a certain extent, inevitably in the process of the translation, you are losing voice and style, which is maybe true. You have to read the essay and let's see. And then let's bring in the piece of work, because the essay topic required you to bring in a work of literature that you want to reference. The Iliad, the foundational ancient Greek epic poem composed by Homer in the 8th century BC, is one example of a text whose artistry and message can never be fully conveyed in translation. Okay, now we're getting to the point that it cannot be conveyed. We went first into some misconceptions or some beliefs with the flaw in the logic, and therefore it cannot be conveyed. And let's use the Iliad as an example. Attempts by translators to stay faithful to the original Greek come at the expense of the audience's enjoyment. While making the poem more accessible to readers, while making the poem more accessible to readers, sacrifices Homer's craft. So although the translator is doing their best job to communicate the definitions of the words of the Iliad, inevitably it's never going to have the same stylistic beauty and resonance with readers as the original Greek text. And the idea is that it's going to have to, in some way, detract from the original craft of the writing. Just the nature of the language, the nature of the wording, and then he goes, later in the bodies, we go into the specific examples, but let's keep reading the intro. This problem with the Iliad is indicative of a broader conundrum. Conveying the full meaning and literary quality of a foreign piece of literature in translation is impossible. So stating the problem and now getting down to the root thesis that is going to be proven in this essay. We have a strong voice here. In addition to simply, connecting the dots, we can tell with some force the belief of the writer and the author, and this is essential. Keeping a strong voice can be very impactful to the reader's response, more than simply the specific points provided. And let's take a look at how it ended then. If we're gonna, we would say the typical intro is kind of, big to small, and then we'd say the typical conclusion is small to big, meaning more specific at the beginning, broader at the end. So, though translation may convey the broad themes of a work, they inherently cannot do so with the same depth and literary quality and meaning in the target language as in the original language. So, essentially a reiteration of the thesis. The Iliad serves as just one example of this problem, exposing difficulties in translating both the Greek itself and the Homeric Greek worldview. So why can't it do it well? Well, it has the issue of first, capturing the full meaning and cultural context of the Greek itself, and you have the entire worldview that surrounds it. It does not translate into a modern English. Attempts at translation always result in deviations from the author's original intentions. The only way to truly appreciate the art and meaning of original literature in a different language is to not only speak that foreign language, but live that foreign culture, a daunting task for contemporary cultures and an impossible one for cultures long past. So the idea being that, throughout the body paragraphs, he then, explained even more about how hard it is to capture the cultural importance or cultural meaning of a lot of different concepts. Lots of talking, need some water. So the idea that not only are you dealing with language as having a direct denotational meaning, but you're also dealing with it connotationally and also culturally. How can you really express how important a certain concept or name or figure is if you're not having lived in that era? You're gonna be lacking at least a little bit. Yet, great works of literature are still worth reading, even if we're in for a different culture. Perhaps translations should indeed be treated as separate works of art, each interpreting their source text in unique perspectives to better our understanding of a great piece of literature worthy of translation. So he's then, taking this seriously, not just as an assignment, but really digging into insight in his own consideration. The idea being that, once again, to say that it doesn't capture the full meaning doesn't mean they're trash. He's not saying they're bad. It's just in principle, it's not possible. But if that's the case, well, A, I think you should still read them if they're great pieces of literature. And B, perhaps we should just be evaluating them on a separate metric. We can't be viewing them as original works. Anytime they're translation, they fall into a separate category. And regardless of the reader's specific feeling about it, I believe it's reasonable. And it shows that this topic is important to the writer, rather than they're just accomplishing it like an assignment. They're really trying to convey a meaning and an attitude. So that is a little bit as it pertains to analytical writing, and writing that is perhaps more similar to a traditional English class in high school. Let's continue though to professional writing. Professional writing, say, I'm in high school, I'm not professional. Well, I believe you still contact people quite a bit through email or in other contexts where you have to be writing letters or in this kind of format. So let's run through. Call this person Adam. Let's say he's a blogger that you love, and you never felt you had the courage to talk to him, and maybe you would like to write for him, or you'd like to do something. I say this partially because I personally contacted somebody when I was about 16, 17. I was a rising senior. And it was a blog called theamateurgourmet.com. You can look it up. My picture was taken off, but my picture used to be on there, but the story is still there. But I originally just reached out because I really enjoyed the blog. I like cooking. I was reading the blog. He did a good job explaining recipes and giving me some confidence to try different recipes. So I just one time was like, hey, why not just reach out and just say, I like your work. And then he responded, because that's what people do. If a student reaches out and says, I think you're great, the person who receives that is really happy. They say, wow, oh, cool. I didn't know that this person's out there reading it. It doesn't, matter how famous they are, they can be really touched. And as a student, you have a lot of power. People want to help you. If you're not a student anymore, people immediately stop wanting to help you, because now you should be working. Now you should be earning your everything, right? But you're a student. Wow, what can I do for you? How can I help? So as a student, you have a lot of power. But let's get back into, how you reach out to these people. And the idea is, I hope you're having a great week. Some kind of way to ingratiate yourself slightly. But, my name is Jonathan. I'm a rising senior at Fancy High School. I am a huge fan of your work ever since I read your blog or book or watched your YouTube video about whatever it was. The point is show that you care, and then link it to something specific to show you really care. And so they get some context about what you've actually read and done or listened from them. I finally wanted to reach out to you personally to tell you how much I admire your skill and talent as a writer. If that's true, say it. Don't hold it back. Say the nice thing. The whole point is you're reaching out to somebody. So lay it out all on the line. Next, I personally enjoy writing too. So if there's somehow you want to get involved, maybe you want to, some kind of contribute like a guest blog or whatever you're trying to do with that person. I would say I personally enjoy writing too. And I know it is more than I can ask, but I would love to talk sometime and even provide a guest blog entry on your platform. I have attached some writing samples for your reference. Don't be afraid to ask something. You just, no matter what, you would say, no matter what, I really look forward to keeping in touch, Adam. So the idea is you care about the writing, no matter what, or you care about what they do. No matter what, you're going to keep following them. But in the meantime, it would be great. You'd love to talk. You'd love to have this opportunity to get to know them. And if they would accept that, fantastic. And then I said, best cool guy or cool girl. The idea being that a lot of people are going to respond to you if you do this. More people than you think could ever respond to you will respond. And they may not take you up on every single offer to do everything that you want, but they'll likely say thank you. And it can go very far, if that makes sense. So be aware that there's good and bad ways to approach professional writing. But really, we're going to do a recap here. But the principles of professional writing are going to still be very much of the same principles as creative writing and analytical writing. What is your goal? Are you connecting with the reader can you think from their perspective, and and is your message clear? So let us go through a little bit on that recap. So writing recap, be purposeful. Your writing is trying to prove something, is trying to say something. And what is it trying to say? Be aware of that as you're writing, or especially before you begin writing. Be clear. Make sure those points are tied together in a way that's logical and that makes sense to the reader. Be aware. Be aware of your biases. Be aware if you might be saying something offensive, or maybe you want to be saying something offensive, but so maybe you want to preface it, or what you're saying. Well, maybe I have a strong opinion on this. Well, let me put it in context. Or like that student who says, basically about his dad, being so intense about, composting. His mom had a little revolt. Be aware. Okay, I know it's a little crazy, but this matters to me. I'm aware not everybody can handle this, but it matters to me. That kind of awareness goes a long way with readers. And don't be scared. It's just writing. Once again, it can't hurt you. You might just be a little frustrated at times. The rest is practice. Leading into the next tip. Practice, practice, practice. Read a lot. Write a lot. Read a lot with us. Write a lot with us. We do a lot of writing classes. If you want to contact us, want to do writing class, please do it. We'd love to work with you. We can give you free assessments and grade your writing and help you to how to improve. That's all free. You can just do that. You just contact us in WeChat or online. But no matter what, you got to do it, because you're not going to get better by thinking about it. You're only going to get better by doing it. So I just wanted to thank everybody for attending tonight. We had a very nice audience and some really fantastic questions. If you want to continue with follow-up, of course, you can scan us in free consultation. We have our WeChat. You can contact us via email. But please, if anybody has questions right now, sure, we do have questions. I like your seminar. Who will be teaching your writing class? Any other classes you offer? Well, thank you for that question. Unfortunately, Jesse's not here today. He is our lead writing teacher. We do have other teachers too, but Jesse's great. And in terms of other classes, yes, we offer a full range of courses from test prep, your typical SAT, ACT, SSAT, down to high school level math, down to AMC competition math, into writing across middle school and high school. Basically, that's our age range, middle school and above, but covering all different areas. Do you have other good examples to share? Great question. Yes, we have so many essays in our reserves. We'd be very happy to speak with any parent, any student to share more examples of good writing. And hopefully, once again, one of the best ways to improve your writing is by reading good writing. So be a good reader and begin practicing your writing more. Okay, more questions. How have your students been doing so far? So this is when we can get into our results and we go into their grades and everything. We've been very happy with their progress. And no matter what age group, we have students as low as 6th grade. We have students into college. And the idea is the writing practice. Although we do have courses that are a fixed limit, we have students that go beyond the course and to know that writing is something that they will need to be improving for their lives. We have students who work for us for years. But yeah, we've been very happy to see their progress to become more mature thinkers. It's a really big part of writing. It's hard to put into a specific lesson plan, but if we can approach a writing course well, then it forces the students into becoming more mature thinkers. Do the parents see the project students write? Of course, of course. Now I will say when it gets into college essays, sometimes students ask for confidentiality. We get all sorts of stories, but in general, in writing class for typical essays, of course, it's important for parents to be aware of feedback, be aware of the progress, see it. We say seeing is believing. Wouldn't say just trust us. Certainly, I definitely want to see your own child's writing as reasonable. Okay. How big is your class size? So we do one-on-one and semi-private. So we cap it at 4 students. But a lot of our work is one-on-one, but we do have semi-private classes as well. Definitely, please contact us. If you're in our WeChat group, please add us. You can add me directly. You can add our BEEC account as well, and we'd be happy to give details about pricing and different options and everything. Can we do a trial first? Well, absolutely. We offer a free assessment for all of our students. That means, like for example, for writing, we have middle school assessment, we have a high school assessment. We would grade it, and then we would walk you through the assessment results, and then provide a plan of how we would want to improve your writing. And that's just for writing. We do the same thing, whether it's SAT, that means free mock test. We give you an awesome report about what you need to work on, and then no matter what, even if you don't go with us, you have this great free report. But luckily, a lot of people go with us. How do you evaluate the writing scores or the writing scores? At the high school level, we end up using UC writing standards. The idea is you're probably preparing for college for your writing, and we do recognize the UC standard as a pretty good one. They have their own rubric. So we just use it as a baseline and a way to give a specific score. That's good. Yeah, good question. Great. Any other questions? Yes, really appreciate the big audience here. Oh, what types of writing do you practice with the students? So this oftentimes is related, at least partially, to their needs. As in, a lot of students we work with are throughout the school semester or specifically related to school writing. So that's more analytical writing. And, that is very important. So a lot of students, they want to improve their English grade, let's be honest. So that means more literary analysis, that type of writing, and that's quite common. But then we also have students, especially during summer, that want to really strengthen their creative writing skills, and we're very happy to do that. Biggest demand is school writing, but we get a lot of creative writing students too. How much do your students improve in general? How do you evaluate that? So that's why the assessment's really important. If we do want to quantify the improvement, it is doable. We really like to use UC standards, and they have just a college preparation rubric, and we believe it's pretty good, as for our purposes. And then we are able to add additional qualitative analysis of what's happening. But oftentimes it's very easily evaluated because their grades go up in high school. Students that are getting C's are getting B's, students are getting B's are getting A's. So that's also a nice way to evaluate it. What would that fit students going for private colleges? Oh, of course. So what the UC is like in a writer is very much the same of what another college would like as well. It's just the UCs, given that they're public school, they publish everything, so which is great. So perhaps Harvard has a hidden evaluation, but nobody knows it, right? But at least UCs will publish it. Yeah, but it's a very good question. It would absolutely be fit for private colleges. Is Jesse your only teacher? No. We have a number of teachers, and we can be sharing more about our BEC prep teachers, their background. We have a nice big menu of teachers. I just mentioned him because he was going to be giving a presentation today, so I hope he's feeling better. But we also have teachers for math and different subjects. Does that mean we can change teachers if we need to? Yes. There are times when we change teachers. It is pretty rare because the student gets to meet the teacher prior, so there's usually this kind of connection there. But yes, if needed, of course, we're amenable to it, although it's rarely requested, but we are amenable. Great. Any other, okay, we got thank you. Well, you're welcome. Okay, fantastic. I'll give one more minute for further questions. Really great. We got most of the audience still hanging out, asking questions, getting great answers. And I have a one in the chat, but I did not see a question there. It says HOI, hoi. Okay. Maybe perhaps. And then we got a thanks. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate everybody, making the time, and hopefully it was useful. We took this from a little bit of an abstract perspective, but really thought that would be better use of your time rather than, getting so deep into specific mechanics of writing, which would be more done in a class. So thank you again to everybody. Have a great weekend. And yeah, thanks again. Okay. I will be ending now. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Okay, you're welcome.